Okay.
We're recording.
So welcome. This is our fourth training session. And we are recording, just for your knowledge there. And and right now, this class, we will do some, some practice, but also welcome back. And we're trying to create a culture of empathy, and hopefully we'll delve a little bit into what that means to you, how the circle fits in, and we'll see how that goes. So I just, you did have the feedback, and I just want to make some short responses to that. One of the things was about, challenges, specific challenges. And so we encourage you in your breakout rooms to, kind of bring those to your breakout room facilitators, mind, and, we'll deal with them there. Also, we have a fifth session next week, so we can also do some of that there. The other one was about physical breaks. We sort of imply that there you can take a break, just sort of like the vibe we give off. It's sort of like, if you need a break, take a break. So please understand that that's the case. We don't always do, schedule the breaks because of a time crunch. But if we need to, that's something under, we're looking at. And certainly if you need one, please take one. And the other one was if you can create a circle, or you need to be quote unquote certified or not, we're asking you to do that. So please go ahead and start a circle if you feel that you're ready to do that, and you can. And we'll also, the question was, how do you create a circle? How do you get people in? And also in the fifth class, we'll be talking a little bit more about that. And those are generally speaking the themes that we saw in the feedback. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Ben, and we'll have a little short check-in. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Bill. So we'd love to hear from each person to hear a bit about the empathy call, or any empathy circle that you've facilitated in or participated in over the week, or what's on your mind, or anything that's left from last week. So I'll call on each person, and spending maybe 30 seconds just hearing from each person. So Marixel.
So I didn't do any empathy circles this week, but I had a very wonderful chat with Shima, and we learned a bit more about each other. So it was good to get to know her better, and how we want to include empathy in our day-to-day activities. So that was good. That was a good chat, and I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Marixel. Lou.
Let's see. I'm just really happy to be here. As people come on and we see your faces and people say, oh, hi. It's like, I love that sense of community and belonging and welcoming. And I'm also just grateful to be connecting with other kind of souls that care about empathy and trying to make the world a more empathic place. So I'm so full of gratitude for you all. That's where I am right now.
Thanks, Lou. Russia.
Hi. So it's been a very, very exciting, but a very stressful week for me, because it's my sister's wedding, which is on Sunday. And so I'm in my hometown with my parents. I'm helping them, get everything ready, prepared. So it's just been a lot of running around. I was outside the whole day, but despite that, I'm surprised that, it's nearly 11:30 p.m. over here, but I wouldn't miss this. I mean, just coming here and seeing all of you is kind of, it feels good. And I had a call with Malin this week, and we kind of practiced the empathy circle for 5 minutes each, but that was really nice. Getting to know her was really nice. Thank you.
Edwin.
Yeah, I'm super jazzed. Just before this call, I talked to the district manager of my congressman. So they're on board doing an empathy circle with congressional representatives. It's just the nuts and bolts of making it happen. I had hoped that they would reach out to Republicans, and they said it's impossible. We don't have any connections with Republicans. So I'm going to try to reach out, try to see if we can reach out. If anybody has a Republican, Congress member that they know, we'd like to bring them into the circle. So I'm just super jazzed. Plus they're working together. We're going to meet every Tuesday until we make this happen. So they're sort of committed to, Congressman's committed to making this happen. So I'm jazzed about that. Yeah, that's it.
Graham.
So, like Edwin, or at least like Lou, rather, I'm very happy to be here, and it's nice to see the same faces again. I had the group empathy sessions I've had. I participated in one of Edwin's empathy circles on Friday morning, and to me that was just amazing. There were things that happened in there that were very impactful. And I also participated in a group led by Sita. And likewise, I really enjoyed that meeting. So in that sense, that was an exciting week. I was to be paired up with David from Poland, and I contacted him. I didn't persist or anything, so I just let it lapse if it was to lapse, and so we didn't meet. It's a shame, and I see he's not here today, so that's possibly a sort of pair of significant pieces of information. Anyway, I look forward to the rest of our meeting, and thank you.
Marlon.
I am happy to be here. Last week I had a migraine, I had a cold sore, everything was hurting, my sinuses was just blocked, but now I feel better. I had a great buddy call with Rasha, and we did the reflective listening, and it was quite short, our buddy call, but because of the reflective listening, it became more efficient. So I don't think those buddy calls always need to be so long. And I had a big insight this week. I got the email from Edwin, and I saw the photo of all the different groups, and then I thought, wow, how can you guys keep track of everyone? But then I realized we are simply listening to each other. We don't have to invest so emotionally and take responsible for other people. So that's why I think we can deal with all these people. And I had a compassion fatigue and burnout a few years ago from working as a veterinarian in the clinic. And I wish I had learned this years ago, because it was so different the way I would talk to people. But unfortunately, in our school system, we don't have this yet. Thank you.
I think Ben was having technical issues.
Oh, Ben
Dean,
is
you were
on.
going to take over if he did. You're mute. Oh, there he is.
My internet connection is on and off. So if that happens again, maybe Dean, you could take over. Anne?
Yeah, for me, I had a great call with Sita. I enjoyed that, and a group that I've been part of for the last 2 years. We had a meeting, and it was due to do something which was more about like taking care of each other, and basically turned it into an empathy cafe. So it felt a little bit doing it with people that I already knew, and that they weren't kind of bought into it, but a small group of us agreed to my suggestions, which was basically running it like an empathy cafe. So, and it went really well. People want more. So I'm pleased and happy about that.
Sunita?
Good evening, and yeah, I'm happy to be here. I had a fantastic buddy call with Erin, and I think that was the highlight of the week, just to know where we are in our journey and sharing that conversation, getting connected to each other. It was very rejuvenating. So thank you, Erin, for your time. I think it went on for more than an hour, but yeah, that was very good. I also had I organized an empathy circle with some of my friends who are back in India. And so that was healing too for all of us. The fact that we could make time to sit and listen to each other actively. Yeah. And I'm so grateful to all of you here for this, because this is life-changing. This is the connection, the bonding. Yeah. So thank you so much. And Edwin, I have, I think, watched all of your videos, all of your interviews, and I keep wondering, how can you do that? Like how does it just happen? You take all the risks possible. That is really like in Buddhism, we talk about how to be a bodhisattva. I think you're a real example of that. So thank you. Thank you. I mean, I did take Edwin's name, but it's all of you. Thank you so much.
Bill?
Yeah, I'm really excited to be back here. We're running there are two cohorts going. So, and what I found is that it's just like the two groups are almost like one group, one big group. Like I'd love for you to meet them. And the other part is that well, and it's good to know that those people are out there. You haven't met them yet, but you will. And then the other part is that I am working very hard on a curriculum to put empathy circles in schools. And so please contact me. It's not quite fully baked yet, but it's getting there. And I have a lot of adaptations and a lot of ways you can go. So if I can be a resource to you, please, contact me. I'd love to talk to you about it. Thanks.
Sita?
Hi, everybody. I echo what a lot of people say. I'm really happy to be here, and it was a lot of fun to get online and see other people getting online and waving to each other, and it's lovely. I really appreciate this a lot. Yeah, so I had a really nice call with Anne, and my empathy buddy for the week. And then also Celine had reached out to me early at the end of our class last week and asked me to facilitate, as I had been speaking about having trouble finding people to do that with here. And so that I really appreciated that. So we had a group with Celine and her son and Graham, and it was I enjoyed doing it. It was a really nice experience to facilitate with them. A very gentle circle, and it was good to practice. So, yeah, thank you.
I'll include myself here. So checking in. The week's been a good week for me. I had a good empathy call with Celine yesterday. And I'm really excited to be back for week 4 here to be doing more empathy circling. And I think it's such a great way to connect with people and to learn about how we are with each other. And looking forward to the evening. It's my evening here in Scotland. Erin.
Hi. I think everything's been said and very well put. Congrats, Edwin. I'm really excited to hear about that. And I want to follow everything that's happening there, because that needs to happen. And also what Bill said about nice to know that these people are out there. I think the same thing. It's incredible. I think Sunita and I's conversation was really great, and I think that was one of the things that was we're really feeling just, you know, we have a sense that some of these things need to happen, and maybe they are, you know, but when you can connect to somebody, you know, so far away and hear that it's happening for them, it's really, really powerful. So that was a great connection. I didn't do an empathy circle this week, so that it feels like a loss, but committing to it now, you know, for this next week to do that. So thank you.
Dean.
Turbulent week. Daughter moved out after she'd moved back in again after leaving. So, feeling up and down like a yo-yo. So she's gone in a good way, in a safe space this time. We know where she is, unlike last time. So I've reached out to lots of people and had lots of listening time with them and reflecting time with them. Occasionally, the odd misunderstandings happened, but then that's how we are. We occasionally step on someone's toes, but then we have the listening process to hopefully facilitate the coming back together again. Yeah, thank you.
Shema.
So I had a really amazing empathy call with Meritzel in Spain. And I don't know if you all know this, but Meritzel is an expert, an empathy expert. And she actually works as an empathy life coach in Spain. And she's published multiple books about empathy. Right now they're in Spanish, but she's in the process of getting them translated into English. And so I had the pleasure of just talking to her about her knowledge of empathy, and I asked her questions about how to motivate people to join empathy circles and just to motivate people to learn about empathy. And she had some really great ideas, and it was just really interesting. And I think we should maybe use her expertise more in our group. So that was a real highlight of my week. And I did do an empathy circle with 2 of my neighbors. And I thought I would add some spice to the circle by bringing up some differences of opinion for a change. And so we had a little bit of tension, but then one member kind of changed the subject to something easy to talk about, but it was a good experience.
Celine?
Well, I'm happy to be here also today. I had an empathy buddy call with Ben that I enjoyed, and enjoyed participating in the circle that Sita facilitated and that my son was willing to be part of. That was a thrill for me. So I'm happy to be here and ready to go.
Rachel.
Yeah, happy to be here today. And yeah, echoing just gratitude and congrats on for collectively moving this mission forward, for all the work that we're doing in our little corners of the earth. So yeah, I had a great call with Lynette to learn about what she's doing in Calgary, which is near-ish to me in Canada. And it's just always good to connect with like-minded people.
Wonderful, thank you everybody. Unless I'm mistaken, I think that is everybody. So Dean, over to you to describe what happens next.
So today we will devote all our time in the breakout circles to giving you time to practice the facilitation process. We won't be going into the how-to descriptive. So each facilitator will set the challenge level that they desire. They can set no, or they can set up to 5. Set the topic, and then we're going to keep the time short. We're going to keep them to 3 minutes, and then you're going to have to deal with the challenges as a facilitator. We're then going to have a 30-minute debrief at the end of our breakout rooms to discuss what's happened. So I'll pass it over to Edwin to make the breakout rooms. I'll see you on the other side.
Oh, Bill, did you want to say something? Did you have or about the culture of empathy? I didn't know if that was
Oh,
Afterwards.
if not.
yeah, we'll do it afterwards. But I did want to say one thing, which you've already done here, but it was another question, I think. And that was, can you create empathy circles, among the students? And the answer is yes, you've already done it. So, but just that, we encourage that any way you can. That's a good way that several people can get that requirement met.
Okay, great. So I created the breakout rooms. There's Lou, Bill, Ann, and Dean. And there's 2 people missing. So they were actually in your group, Ann. So I'll join your group. Lynette emailed, said she wasn't feeling well. So anyway, here we go into the room. So we have about an hour and a half, a little bit, hour and
A little more.
35 minutes.
Do you want to put the challenges in the chat? Is that handy?
I can do that. I have
Okay.
it.
Oh, the link.
Yeah, hold on. Or, well, I was going to put the actual words.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Hang on.
So you can dial up your challenge. Was it none, medium, no, low, medium, high, or 1 to 5, however you want to, 0 to 5. Okay, here we go. We're all set. Just all right. Here we go. See you in the rooms.
Hi, Adrian.
Hey. So we were down 2 people for this group. So just, I guess I'll join. And I might have to step out for doing sort of, sometimes people drop out and I have to kind of bring them back in.
So in fact, Edwin, Ben was going to do mainly the facilitating of this one.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess there are 4 of us, and 4 may be down to 3 if Edwin is leaving. So I'm just thinking about time. So if we call it 6:30, so it's my 6:30 now. So I think we have about 90 minutes. So that's easily 20. Well, that's 20 minutes each, and 10 minutes to debrief. Is one way we could do this. And so I'm wondering, Celine, whether you feel okay to dive in and take the first 20 minutes to facilitate a circle with us. I guess what I mean is to choose a topic and to think about timing for each round, which I guess 3 minutes or 4 minutes. I'll time the overall arc, which would be about 20 minutes, and you could take responsibility for the timing in that. Are you happy to go first?
Sure. Question, I saw, Anne, you put something in the chat about a particular challenge. Is this part of what we're doing?
Yeah, it was a list of different challenges that might arise. But
I see it.
I've just pasted and copied it, so it's not in a very good
okay.
format. You might already have it from the main chat.
Yeah. All right, I got it. But it's not like I'm asking for this particular challenge. I'm just saying a level of challenge. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
Okay. So, and am I doing the introduction as well? No. Okay. So as facilitator, I will be the first listener. And
sorry to interrupt, Celine.
Yeah.
And can I check in? So thinking about challenging, I guess sort of on a number from kind of 0 to 5. I guess if between us, or if I'm sort of introducing some challenge, potentially with Anne as well, can you give a numerical value to how much challenge you're sort of wanting to meet?
2.5.
2.5. Great.
that
Yeah,
work
sorry, I
for
won't.
you?
Yeah, that's great. But back to you. I won't interrupt this time.
Okay. So the topic is I'm so interested in what Edwin talked about government people not wanting to even bother trying to listen to the other side, but I don't know how to turn that into a topic. So I'm going to pick as my topic as a speaker the challenges that I see in terms of this work. And you will listen, and I'm speaking for, do we have 4 minutes?
I think that's fine to have 4 minutes round. I think that's good.
Okay. You ready?
Yeah, Celine.
All right, thank you. Okay. This question of who would want to participate in empathy circles is very interesting to me. I want to have empathy circles between people who don't think the same. And I don't know enough yet about how I can make this an interesting and welcoming event.
So what I'm hearing is you're thinking about having empathy circles between people who don't think the same way, and you're wondering how to make that an interesting event for people.
Yes, and welcoming even. I also am curious about doing this with people I know in Mexico. Last year I was living in Mexico and thought I would be living again there this winter, but the pandemic changed that. But it being a very different culture, I'm curious about that.
And you find yourself curious about doing it with people from Mexico where you used to live, and that you'd like to do it with them, particularly because it's a different culture that they have.
Yes. And the same is true. I also am connected to Argentina, where I was raised, where listening is not often part of normal conversation.
So I'm hearing you're thinking similarly about Argentina, which is where you were raised, and that you know that listening isn't part of the normal conversation there.
So asking one person to be silent while another person speaks, I don't even know how I would present it, except to people who already have committed to practicing empathy.
So I sense you feel almost like flummoxed about how you could present it to people if they don't even understand that. But that might not be quite right. Would you like to clarify?
Yes, so I know people in the nonviolent communication community, and they, of course, are interested in learning to listen. But the public in general, that is not a central part of the culture as far as my understanding goes.
So I hear that you imagining that people in, for example, the NVC community there, nonviolent community, would be able to or want to, but in terms of the general public, I've got no sense that they would.
Yes, that's correct. So I'm pondering these different possibilities.
So you're pondering on these possibilities.
Thank you. So my time is up, and I feel fully heard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Celine. Okay, so I'll choose Edwin. Edwin, would you listen to me, please? Right. Feel like I've got something in my eye this evening.
You feel you have something in your eyes, distraction?
Yeah, just try to ignore it. I've just had an eye infection in the other one, so I suspect it's might have gone across. When I was hearing you talk, Edwin, actually earlier, I immediately thought of the work my daughter's doing in the UK, and she's running an organisation called Make Votes Matter in order to try to get true democracy in the UK. And it made me think about, and she's actually works with all the different parties and goes to the different party conferences. So it's a cross-party alliance.
That sounds pretty interesting. Where is she? Is that something I can get involved with? Because she's not.
Ben, I thought it was Edwin's turn. Is that correct? Edwin is.
Oh right, yeah. Sorry.
Now. Thank you.
Sorry.
So you'll get your turn.
So basically, she's trying to get proportional representation, and previously, because she's now been doing this for a few years, I was all in favour of it, and I still am. But I think I ought to pause now to give you a chance, Edwin.
Yeah, so when I was talking about the political topic, it sounds like it's kind of stimulated your thoughts about your daughter, who's been sort of working in this area, and she kind of connects with all the different parties, and sounds like she's trying to do some sort of democracy building sort of projects. And so it seems like there's some parallels to what I'm doing.
Well, you're talking about it made me think about it, and she's trying to get proportional representation, which we don't have in the UK. It's far from as in the US. It's a broken system. And I'm less kind of interested in what she's doing now, because I feel like we're past that. It's too late.
Yeah, so she's trying to work on proportional representation in the UK, which you don't have, and sounds like you've kind of not interested in that anymore. You think it's too late for that kind of. We've gone beyond it in some way.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great if we could and it can make it work, but it feels like turning the clock back in order to have any hope of making that work. So much more radical needs to change. But it was a really good idea, and it was really good to bring people together. And she did have the odd Tory in her alliance.
Yeah, so you think it was a good idea, and it's like we need more radical change, though. Now you have that sense, and she was able to connect, sounds like, with the Tories, so the sort of the more conservative group.
Yeah, I won't continue other than just to add this little bit in, which was just thinking about how maybe using empathy circles within that movement could actually be really maybe quite powerful.
So just to add to that, that maybe with the work she's doing, having empathy circles, if she was doing that, could be sort of a powerful step or piece.
Thank you. I feel fully heard.
Great. Then speak to Ben.
Listening.
Oh, I think I should have a bit longer, really. Could I?
Well, I'm fine with you having a bit longer. It's fine with me if you really.
Well,
all right, then.
and how about we listen to everybody first and then see if there's time for another round? Would that work for you?
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we'll see. Okay, Ben. Let's see. That kind of threw me off. I had some stuff I was thinking, though, when Anne interrupted me. It kind of threw me off from where my thoughts were. So I got to sort of collect again, even though I'm fine with her having more time.
You're just collecting your thoughts and recognizing that you're a bit kind of thrown off by the interruption there.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. There's a group that I connected with in the UK. It's called Compassion in Politics or something like that. It's a UK group, and they're trying to do bridging political divides. And I talked to one of the co-founders of that, and she's got connections with the different parties. She was supposed to get back to me again. We had chatted a bit, on Zoom, and she was supposed to get, and I just emailed her again as a reminder. So I thought there might be some collaboration possibilities. She was interested in the empathy circles.
So you're just remembering what it is that came to mind when Anne was speaking, which was about somebody you've been in touch with in the UK who has an organization called Compassion in Politics or something like that, and there was some interest in collaborating. And so there's possibly.
So it just got me thinking. Maybe I think if we can get one empathy circle with, some congressional representatives or some parliamentary, parliamentarians, that we could demonstrate it and model it, that it might kind of help get a little bit of a snowball going. So I'm really hoping we can do it with my congressman to just sort of model, it happening.
Yeah, I think we need something like that in the UK as well. There's, as you said, there might be.
Excuse me, Ben, would you be willing to first reflect back what you heard Edwin say so that he can feel fully heard? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think you were saying you've been in touch with your local congressman and working with him to try and arrange an empathy circle.
Yeah, but the point is I'm really trying to get a model of it. If we can get an actual circle done, sort of in the can, and be out there public, then we can reference it and say, look, here's something we did, and we have a sample. So I think the first one is the hard one, but if we can get a sample out there and it can be, good, then I think it could kind of it would help sort of spread it.
So you've got this sense that sort of once the first one happens, that it will kind of act as a sort of ignition, some example or model or sample for what can take place.
And I'm talking with the district manager, his district manager, and I had asked if they would actually reach out to representatives, Republican representatives, because he's Democrat, and she basically said, we don't know anybody. No Republicans. We can maybe try some Democrats, but there was nobody they felt they could reach out to on the Republican side. Even though they're right in Congress, there's hundreds of people running around. They felt like it was too big of a stretch to. So they want, if we want a Republican, it's kind of on us to kind of make it happen.
So it's kind of ironic because then if you're thinking about having conversations across political divides, speaking to the Democratic congressman there just wasn't any contact at all with any Republicans.
Yeah.
I've got an idea, Edwin.
Yeah.
So, Anne, you'll get another chance to speak, hopefully. So thank you, Anne. And I'm going to put the time for Edwin now.
Okay, I feel fully heard then for now.
Thank you. And I'd like to remind all of us to pause after one or two ideas so that the listener can capture everything that has been said. Appreciate it. Thank you. So Ben, your turn to speak now.
Great, thank you. Celine, will you listen?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
So I think I'm sticking to the topic, I think, which you first raised, which is what challenges do I see in this, and in particular, you know, sort of in the way that I'm engaging with this process, what challenges do I see in it? So I think I'm going to try and speak to that topic.
So you're thinking about the topic of what challenges do you see in terms of the empathy circles and how it works for you. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. And so one which is already there is something about kind of conversation about values. So there's part of me that thinks actually when a cohort like this comes together and sort of written into what we're doing is creating a culture of empathy, or and you know, enacting that, embodying that, and exploring that. That talking about values seems like a very natural thing. But I think in other situations, I think I'm thinking of my mediation work, where to start off a process by talking about what values are being brought to the table might not seem like a natural process and might require quite a lot of facilitation.
So you're comparing the situation with empathy circles, where talking about values works really well, and people connect discussing and sharing about values, whereas in another context, like for example, that wouldn't work so much. That would require preparation and more facilitation.
Yeah, I think so. So I'm wondering, yeah, for some reason in my mind, I'm wanting to kind of bridge these two practices, like on the one hand, sort of mediation over kind of civil disputes, on the other hand, kind of empathy circling. There's part of me that wants to see these as somehow engaged with a similar kind of thing, but actually there's also a sense in which they're quite different. You know, mediation of civil disputes is also quite different to what we're doing with empathy circles, perhaps.
So you're looking at how empathy circles work, comparing to mediating disputes, and seeing if there's a way that where there could be some maybe cross-pollination. But up until now, you see that there's really quite different. The two processes are very different.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And perhaps there's a bigger pattern there, in what if to the extent that there is a kind of a divide between people or between groups in a particular situation, what does that divide consist of? So is there something very material or some very straightforward or simple distinction or difference or dispute, which accounts for the divide, or compared to situations where it's something more nebulous, and maybe something deeper in a sense to do with identity even, you know, so the people across the divide are considering themselves to be sort of, you know, essentially different rather than necessarily arguing about a particular thing. Sorry, I'm not sure that was very clear.
So what I'm hearing, and it's time, is that you're looking at maybe there's a bigger pattern in terms of the divide between empathy circles and mediation of disputes. And you're not sure how the role of identities plays in this difference, or if it's something else that makes these two ways of communicating or relating. Very different.
Yeah, thank you. That was useful. Yeah, I feel fully heard. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I will speak to Edwin.
Listening.
Right? Okay. Well, I'm interested in this topic of mediation because I have done a lot of mediation in my career, and I see it as an excellent tool for mediators to learn to listen in a neutral way.
Yeah, so you really resonate with the topic of mediation because you've done a lot, and this listening in a neutral way is sort of core to that. So it really fits with all, and you've done a lot of mediation too.
Yes, I think in part of a mediator training, this could work really well. However, it doesn't mean that because one mediator is able to listen in this way, it does, that's going to advance or change the way the disputants listen to each other or not.
So because if the mediator has kind of practiced the listening, it doesn't really affect necessarily how the disputants listen to each other? Or?
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. However, it could be that it's a role modeling and that they kind of like how they're being listened to and try it out. However, if the dispute is pretty strong, I don't know that it would make any difference.
Yeah, so maybe they'll see it modeled, the listening, and they'll sort of take it on. But if it's a really intense dispute, it probably won't make any difference.
Yes, and actually, I can see that it could be irritating. It's like, yeah, I said that. So, so I see that possibility also in a mediation.
Yeah, so disputants might, if they're reflected, they might get irritated just hearing something reflected back.
And that takes me to the factor of how emotionally charged anybody is in, say, Empathy Circle, and how that affects the process, the facilitation part of it.
So you're seeing the sort of the charge that people are bringing into the Empathy Circle, that's going to affect sort of the dynamics of the circle.
Yes. So, and I have watched the video of you with the Proud Boys guy, and I was amazed how you just carried on as if this was some kind of civil discourse and didn't let it didn't seem to be bothering you. You just carried on. And I really appreciate that about you. I think that informs the process and informs the training, and maybe it'll be contagious.
Yeah, so you saw the video of me doing the Empathy Circle with the Proud Boys, and seemed kind of calm about it, just sort of went along with everything, and you feel that attitude might kind of help in general with this whole process.
Yes, thank you. I feel fully heard.
Okay, then I'll speak to Ben.
That's 20 minutes, so maybe this is a good time to kind of debrief a little bit.
Alrighty.
Celine. Celine, I'm interested in how that experience was for you facilitating. What came up?
Well, I felt a little more confident than I have at some other times. I appreciated the challenges, and I believe I caught on to them. And I noticed, not so much about my facilitation, but my listening, is that I seem to tend to summarize more than y'all, as we say in the southern part of the United States, do. So I'm noticing that in myself.
Yeah, that's interesting. Really happy that you felt confident, or you're developing some confidence, because I guess that's what we're doing here to kind of take this out into the world. I'm curious whether there were any particular anything you found difficult, or anything that you would do differently, or.
My intervention about speaking in chunks, I think I might have done that sooner. And so that's one thing that I thought of. Do it a little bit earlier, because some of the speeches were long. And
yeah, I thought that was a great intervention, and I guess it's different if you're explaining, if we had done the introduction when you were explaining at the beginning of the circle, I guess that's also an opportunity to say that kind of thing, isn't it? But at the very beginning of the Empathy Circle.
And I'm glad that I said to people, you'll get a turn. I love that about this process, that everybody gets to, when it's their turn, they get to say whatever they want. And to me, that, unplugs, takes the stopper out when tension is starting to build up. I think it's very reassuring. And so I'm glad I remembered to say that. And I think that's a wonderful tool to have as a facilitator when there's some difficulty.
One thing I really appreciated about the way you started as a speaker was that you're introducing quite a solid pace, or quite a slow pace with a lot of space when you were speaking to Anne. And I appreciated that. And also wanted to add, I think many people will, I guess, with people who are inexperienced with empathy circles, as a facilitator, I think we'll also start in the position of the listener to kind of model the kind of reflective listening process. So that can also be something that you could think about when you're starting an empathy circle, to start in the listening position rather than the speaking position. I don't know, Anne and Edwin, whether you have any.
Yeah, I did notice that too. It's like you said, oh, Anne, would you be the first listener? I think that happened in the other circle too, but it depends, if the people don't know, aren't familiar with it, like everybody here knows, but you kind of judging, but it's good to be the first listener to model it. So.
Thank you. I've made that mistake quite a few times, hopefully for the last time. Yes, thank you.
I love the topic. I'm still like charged about ideas I want to continue with this topic of mediation. It was like a really fun topic. So I still feel kind of alive with that. And also, I think, yeah, you're just very gentle and warm, and it just feels like a really warm circle.
So I'll reply to you, Ben, about this issue of starting as the speaker. The first time I did it and was corrected, I was given, I think, a very lovely way of correction, which is we start by giving, and therefore we start as the listener. But I forget, or I have forgotten. Thank you.
And I don't know whether you have any specific points of feedback or comments for Celine.
Yeah, Celine, I thought that it was that you were on top of any of the kind of behaviours that were going on that we were challenging you with immediately, like you were spotted them straight away, but you weren't confused by them, which was really nice. I think it's an artificial situation because we all know what we're doing here. But I think sometimes when you're in an actual circle and someone hasn't got it quite right and they're maybe new, I'd give it a little bit of leeway before kind of being too authoritarian. But it's not actually, I don't really mean that as a criticism. I'm just trying to be helpful because I think to some extent it writes itself. But you were dealing with us all chipping in with challenging, so it's a bit different.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think that that is something to learn with time, is when it's okay to just let it flow. I was a little concerned that Edwin wasn't catching all of what you were saying, and I thought maybe, but I think that's an important skill to acquire over time, that sensitivity of when to let it write itself.
Yeah,
Thank
probably
you.
like if my thought would be, if when Edwin was reflecting, he was finding it difficult to reflect, and then on the next go that I did it again, then yeah, maybe then at that point, but see, because everybody's different, and the person listening, each person listening has a bit of different capacity, so I'd kind of ease into it in a way.
Yeah, thank you. Good feedback. Thanks.
We're just at the hour. I'm wondering, Anne, do you want to take a position of facilitator? And if you do you have anything to say about challenges?
Hang on a minute, I'm not quite with you, Ben, sorry. I guess I just did then. Sorry if I said too much at that point.
I guess I'm wondering if you want to take the position of facilitator and facilitator circle for 15 minutes.
Oh, okay.
And
all right.
Yeah, we're short on people here. There's like
we are,
three
yeah.
facilitators, so we can take roles ourselves to kind of fill in because we're short two people.
It'd be good to make it as beneficial for Celine and Ben as possible. What's best for you, Ben?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to take a turn, whether I do that now or whether I do that after you, or I'm happy to do either. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just do a brief round then, with me facilitating it, if you like.
You just muted, Ben.
And do you want to say anything about challenges? Do you?
Yeah, you can have 4 or 5.
Ooh,
that's something fun. And let's. That's a bit daft. So the topic I think I'd like to do would be on sort of conflict, kind of continuing what we're doing, mediation and conflict.
Over to you.
So, would anybody like to be the first speaker, and I'll listen?
I'll do it.
Okay, Edwin.
Yeah,
Let me just
I
set
love
the
this.
timer.
Okay.
When time's up, I'll hold up my phone. If you could catch my eye and let me know that you've noticed it, that would be great.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah, the mediation is really great topic. I think we need like a course, a module just on what I call restorative empathy circles for dealing with conflict. So the empathy circle is sort of a foundation for conflict, I think is, I've done a lot of mediation too with empathy circles. I'll pause there.
So you're seeing, it's talking about mediation as a topic being an interesting one, and you think that maybe we need to include a module in the trainings on restorative empathy circles. It's a topic that it's an area that's been interesting you and you've done some work on.
Exactly. And I wanted to address that issue that Ben was talking about, like how do you bring the values into mediation? And the way I've done it, I've said, I start to certainly say, my intention for holding this, facilitating is to build a culture of empathy, which means for each person to be heard to their satisfaction and to be understood to their satisfaction. So I sort of set the context. I say, this is my intention, so I'm clear about it. It's like whatever your intention is, you know, values is kind of up to you. I just want to be clear on what my intention is. So, and does that work for you? And so that's how I've sort of brought in the values into it, to sort of frame it around, you know, mutual empathy. And I think that can be beneficial in the sense it gives a starting point, like, oh yeah, well, I'm good with this. You almost have a bit of agreement that we're all here because of, yeah.
If I could have a chance to feedback there, please, Edwin.
Sure.
So I'm here that you're interested in what Ben was talking about around mediation and the way that you bring in values.
I was actually quite interested in what Edwin was saying and was wanting to hear more.
Thanks, Ben.
More from him.
Yeah,
I'm
me
sure
too.
you'll hear more, but at the moment I'm reflecting back to Edwin, so he can have a chance to be feeling heard, if you don't
so
mind.
shut up, Ben. You're always interrupting. It's very annoying.
What do you mean, shut up?
We do continue, if you excuse me and listen, Ben and Edwin, we do have this culture of empathy where we respect one another and take turns. And you will have a turn to speak when it's your turn, and you can say what you want. I apologize that you're interrupted, Edwin. I'll try to continue with reflecting back to you. So the way you try to introduce into a mediation process is what your intentions are of giving people the opportunity to be heard and understood, and that is what you're trying to achieve. So you bring kind of values of empathy into that kind of mediation process in that way.
Yeah, and the other part is, you know, you hear restorative justice. I mean, the empathy is kind of core to restorative justice. The problem with restorative justice is it's not clear on what you're restoring. And I think saying restoring a culture of empathy, it's like, hey, we want a culture of empathy, you know, everyone to feel heard and included. So we have sort of a baseline. And then if there's a break in that connection, we're restoring that empathic connection. Versus restorative justice is sort of like just restoring the status quo, whatever dysfunction that is. So it's very unclear. I think that this restorative empathy kind of has a sense of clarity to it, adds a sense of clarity. Okay, got it.
So that's your time, but I'd like to feed that back. And what I'm hearing is that you're talking about establishing a culture of empathy at the start. And then the restorative justice is basically ensuring that you can bring back to that level, that basic culture of empathy. And you find that restorative justice is an expression in itself. What are you restoring to? So it's important to establish the ground, the baseline to restore back to.
Yeah, it's a little
Is that
bit.
it?
Not
Do
quite.
clarify.
It's just it's like we want a restorative empathy circle, not restorative justice. So I try to throw out restorative justice term. I like restorative empathy better than restorative justice. I think it.
So thanks for clarifying that. And so what I'm hearing is that actually, rather than use restorative justice phrase at all, you'd stick with restorative empathy. So it's bringing it back to that baseline.
Yeah, exactly. I feel heard.
Thank you, Edwin. So Edwin, it's your turn now. No, it's not. It's my turn. Okay, so Ben, would you listen to me, please?
Listening.
Um, Food for thought. Yeah, I kind of quite like it to just keep going back to we're establishing a place where people can be being heard and understood, and then work from there.
So I think you were kind of refreshing yourself or stretching and wondering where your thoughts were going to take you. And you came back to a place where we're establishing a place where people can be heard.
Yeah, carrying on from what Edwin was saying. And when I think of a conflict, I was in a conflict process with a group of people, and I wasn't happy with the way it went at all. And it wasn't through using empathy circles, but there was never, I don't think there was ever an agreement established that people would try to listen to each other. It was just a token on the part of some of the participants, token gesture of it.
So you weren't really happy at all with what Edwin was saying about his approach to conflict. It just seemed like a kind of a token to dealing with the conflict as it was appearing.
Well, I hope you're giving me a challenge there. So I'll reiterate, because that it isn't what I was saying. It was from what Edwin was saying. I took on board that it would be a really good starting place to establish that this is a place for people to be heard and understood, and then go into the process and bring it back to there. So I wasn't disagreeing with Edwin.
So actually, so you're clarifying you weren't disagreeing with Edwin. Actually, you thought that this would be a really good place to kind of for people to be heard and to. I think you meant that kind of establish a place from which then any conflict could be addressed once a kind of a place of empathy had been established, I think is what you said.
Yeah, so rather than add anything in to, I felt a bit that you were interpreting me at that point, Ben, and we don't interpret when we're feeding back. We tend to avoid doing that. So it was quite an interesting process that I was in that the facilitators asked people to pretend that they had the headphones on and that they, at different points, so they were given, so it's like, in a sense, they were being given the chance to be the active listener, so that when they had the headphones on, they would be listening attentively and then reflecting back what they'd heard and understood, supposedly. But in this process, it wasn't even possible to hand, the facilitators didn't even feel able to hand the headphones to people within the process, within the circle.
So I think you were letting me know that the better to stick to reflection than interpretation. And I think you're describing some sort of conflict resolution or conflict handling process in which there was a process of interpretation, people had headphones, but in this particular event that you're describing, the facilitator didn't even feel comfortable to give their headphones for somebody to listen. But I'm not entirely sure what you're saying. I sort of have a vague image of what you're describing.
Yeah, I think I feel heard. It's as far as I went. There wasn't time to explore it any further. So thank you. I feel heard, Ben.
Thanks. Celine, will you listen?
Yes, happy.
So yeah, actually the sort of the confusion I'm in actually is around this idea about interpretation, and just a simple question like how is the process of communication, or how is the process of conflict involve interpretation? And I guess when I say interpretation, I mean interpreting. Like to what extent, to what extent are we interpreting each other when we're communicating and when we're in conflict and in empathy circles?
So you're interested in and feel some confusion about the issue of interpreting, and how does it apply? How does interpretation apply to the listening and in conflicts, in mediation maybe, and as well as in empathy circles? Are we interpreting? Are we listening, or are we interpreting what someone says?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm wondering about, so for example, when two people have a dispute or when two people are in conflict, how much of what's happening is related to different ways that they're interpreting themselves and interpreting each other?
So you're wondering how, when people are in conflict, how much the role of interpreting, people interpreting themselves or people interpreting each other, plays in the process.
That's right. Yeah, which makes me wonder, what if we can just simply reflect, is part of what's happening in the empathy circle process taking pressure off having to interpret what the person is saying? As if
I have some thoughts on that. Do you want to hear those?
Yeah, actually.
Okay. Well, I'm just thinking about interpretation. What is that really?
Edwin,
huh?
Ed, would you mind? Would you like to say what you like to say when it's your turn to speak?
Yeah, but
and
he
Ben
wanted
will
to
be
hear
able
it.
to
Ben
hear
was
it then.
open for hearing it. I asked him if he wanted to hear it. He said he was.
Yeah, but this isn't your turn at the moment. It's Ben's turn to be heard and listened to and be reflected back to. And Celine's doing that.
Okay, I'm kind of disappointed because this is like, if I don't say it now, I'm going to kind of forget it. So I'm kind of concerned about forgetting these thoughts.
He might not have time either.
Yeah, we might
have
run
another
out of
turn.
time, and these are like really important thoughts.
Yeah, but we do have we have an overall method, and we take turns, and we're equal participants. So the conversation will not be fair if we do go along with that.
Well,
So
I'm all for
please come back
fairness.
to it, Edwin.
Okay,
Maybe you could make
I'll
a
hold
note.
it then. Yeah.
Make a note of it for your turn. It's quite useful to have a piece of paper by your side so you can jot down thoughts that come up. Ben, do carry on. You can have a few more, bit more time because you were interrupted.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, thanks, then. We can come back to that. To finish my thought then, so is there sort of taking the pressure off having to interpret, or taking the pressure off having to understand, and simply just reflecting back is maybe one way that the conflict can be discharged?
So this last piece, you're wondering between interpreting or just listening, what is possible, and how can we even be aware of whether we're just listening or interpreting, and how that works out in a conflict situation.
Yeah, that's useful. Thank you. I feel fully heard. That's also time, and that's 15 minutes.
Thank
is there
you.
any debrief? How are those challenges? Yeah, that was more like a 5 or a 6 than a 4 or a 5.
And I thought it was only out of 5. I'm quite curious, Ben, were you challenging me when you did that bit where I said you were interpreting? Yeah.
I think the first time yes, and the second time no, something like that.
It kind of caught me. It caught me that it was kind of when I was challenged, when you were reflecting back, like if I'd just been the speaker, it would have been quite different. So like it caught me more, the challenge coming when I was being reflected back. It was like, what's going on here? Celine, you wanted to say something, I think. Sorry.
Oh, I liked what you were what you brought in about being equal and fair. I don't usually talk about being fair, but I noticed that I was in agreement. Yes, let's be fair, and there was some comfort in it. But I think it was like a little kid in the playground, or somebody coming and saying, "Okay, let's be fair." Oh, okay. I've been taught to be fair, but it worked for me, so I wanted to say that.
I think as much as anything for debriefing it, I'd like feedback on on the way I interrupted the interruptions, you know, that I dealt with them. And that would be probably best for me coming from you who made them.
Yeah, I interrupted there. And so again, to the referencing the fairness, I thought, oh, okay, I want to be fair too. So it kind of helped, it calmed me. It gave me a value to, you know, to settle on. And so I found it actually helpful when you said, oh, be fair. And, you know, yeah, I felt okay about it. I mean, I was just trying to be a little challenging, and seemed like it was dealt well.
Ben, you did some challenges as well. Any comments?
Yeah, I think I noticed when this sort of you'll get a chance to speak later. I can feel that one. It's like, oh right, oh that's fine then. Okay, yeah, I'll be able to speak later. And I guess the others seemed fine. They seem effective and fine. Yeah, I'm not sure I have a kind of a personal response to them, but they seemed effective. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
How were they for you? I just was your.
The most uncomfortable one was the bit when I felt when Ben, I can't remember what was said now because it was kind of, it came sideways. It caught me off guard. And I tried to field it. So I'm not quite sure what you're referring to as the second one, Ben. But
so I think the first time I simply kind of inverted what you said, and then you were like, no, that's not what I said, and you clarified. And then after that, you said, oh, you're interpreting, maybe you can just reflect. And so I guess I didn't know whether you were referring to my inversion or my second reflection, but it's, you know, maybe that's small print, maybe.
Okay, thanks. Oh, it's good to have the challenges. And they don't, I mean, in the empathy circles that I've been involved in, they're easy peasy compared to the challenges that people dream up in the training sessions in many ways. Yeah.
Yeah, the challenges in these groups where people are coming totally new, sometimes those are a bit harder. You know, if you already have experience with the empathy circle, it's fairly easy. It's that's what I'm sensing from myself. It's like people who just have had no experience with empathy circles, and you get a whole bunch of different people and they come together initially new and they're unsure that those are, like here I feel a little, when I give the challenge, I feel a little role playing. I feel the acting part in it, and it's not as raw and real as the real challenges. Maybe I'm just not a good actor.
Yeah, and it feels like in a real empathy circle, when there are challenges, you kind of ease into solving them as well. That you're with very new people, that you're a bit flexible, and then because you don't want to put people off, you don't want to stop them, but you still want the framework. So it just feels very different dealing with challenges in the training sessions than in a real situation. And almost they're easier in the real situation.
Yeah. And there was the one where you corrected Ben, and I don't know how he took the correction. It's like I could felt that when you're kind of corrected, you feel a little bit of a jolt. And the way I always deal with it is I just reflect back what the correction was. And I was wondering if Ben would reflect back the connection, because that kind of transforms the correction into sort of connection too. Do you remember that? I felt sort of a jolt. I thought,
What? So if I do a correction, I invite them to feedback what I've said.
mm-hmm.
I haven't been doing that. Thank you. That's
no,
a really
but
useful
you
tip.
did make a correction, right, for Ben.
Yeah.
I think you did feed it back to her, didn't you? Yeah, and that, yeah, it's like, oh, so getting a feedback on the correction that they made, it creates a feeling of connection. Like it doesn't have that harsh correction, and because the correction is sort of disconnecting, and somebody reflecting back what you said has sort of it softens it and creates a sense of connection. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Appreciate that comment.
And can I ask you how you said you reflect it? Did you say you reflect it back, the connection, the correction? Or that you said that normally you do something, or that you ask to have it reflect back or something like that. Did anybody else hear that? No. Anyway,
it sounds like you broke up a little bit, Celine.
Oh, I thought I heard you say something about how you, under other circumstances, when you have a correction, that you ask to have it reflected back.
What I've just heard from Edwin is that he's suggesting that having a correction reflected back softens it. So yes. I think in future I will do that. But if I do need to interject with a correction, I'll ask the person I've done that with to feed it back, because as Edwin's pointed out, it softens it somehow. It means it's less jarring for the recipient of the correction or the whole circle.
Okay, I'm understanding now that you were thinking about something to do in a future situation. Thank you.
So my proposal then, I'm suggesting, Celine, would you be happy to, do you want to take another 15-minute facilitation slot? And then if there's time left over, I'll also take a facilitation slot. How does that work for you?
Yes.
Yeah, great.
Okay. So I'll be the listener first. And who would like to speak?
Challenge level, just curious.
3. Very conservative. Maybe 3.5. I don't know.
Do you want to should we stick with the same topic? Do you want to change the topic?
I enjoy the topic. What would I name? How would I name it? Is empathy circles where there's big differences of opinion on a topic. How's that? Or whatever is alive in you.
Yeah, I'll start speaking then. Yep.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I'm not sure I'm speaking to topic, but I'm finding my thought going in the following direction, which is in some situations of conflict and in some mediations, there seems to be a kind of a task for each person or for both people. So sometimes it seems in conflict there's something which needs to be done.
So you're reflecting on how in some circles, some mediations, where there's a difference of opinion or position, that it's a situation where something needs to be done.
So I guess sometimes if there's isn't it the case that sometimes if there's a difference between two people or two groups or differences in a group, it can be because actually what people are trying to do is opposed or is different.
So in some situations, in some groups, the difference is there are kind of agendas. This is about the way something should be done, and somebody has a disagreement about the way that should be done, or even that should be done at all.
Yeah, that's right, and that's useful. So, and I think the distinction you made between what is it that's to be done and how is it that we're going to do it is a useful one.
So you see the distinction between a difference between what is to be done or how something is to be done is a useful distinction.
Yeah, and so isn't there a sense in which empathy circling sort of just shifts the frame and says, well, actually there's something more interesting or more important or more useful. What we're going to do actually is develop a culture of empathy.
And so empathy circles kind of proposes a whole other way of looking at it, in which instead of talking about what we're going to do or how we're going to do it, we're developing a culture of empathy.
So maybe if to the extent that that's true, maybe that's one way of sort of shifting the conflict.
So you see that as a possible way of shifting the conflict or shifting the perspective on the conflict from the perspective of developing a culture of empathy.
But there's still a question for me, which is like that original task, what are we going to do and how are we going to do it? Is there a sense in which that kind of stays unaddressed?
So the question is then, if the focus shifts to creating a culture of empathy and having an empathy circle, what about the initial task, the initial proposal on which there is not agreement?
Yeah, that's right. And then if that's true, then I suppose one way of looking at it could be to say, well, actually, but without that bedrock of empathy, then it's not going to happen anyway. Or that somehow the frame of empathy is a container in which something else happens. Yeah, thanks.
So another perspective is that without that bedrock foundation of empathy and creating a culture of desire to create a culture of empathy, it's going to be very difficult to deal with the conflict about what to do and how to do it.
Yeah, thank you. I feel very heard, fully heard. Yep, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm a listener. So Anne, would you listen to me?
Yes, Celine.
Okay. So I'm going to continue on this thread and say that I like about the empathy circles that there isn't an agenda, there isn't a place that we need to get to or something to accomplish.
So you like in empathy circles, there's not an agenda, there's not a place that you've got to get to, something that has to be accomplished.
I don't think that's what she said, actually, Anne.
Well, listen again and we'll see. It is what I said, actually. I feel heard.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Ben. I think what I appreciate about it is that it's developing a skill and developing a sense of, I'm going to call it respect. I think there's a lot of respect in valuing having everybody heard fully.
You want to appreciate this sense of respect that develops, and this valuing of everybody's voice being heard.
Yes. I would love to see this in the schools. I think it's something to learn very early on. I don't remember anybody trying to teach me to listen. Actually, when I was a child, as I was listening, I was building up my defense or my escape rather than anything else.
And you don't recall learning how to listen, and you believe that it should be in the schools really early on, helping people to learn to listen.
Yes. And also I said that my recollection as a child that I was listening, I was building up my defense, my response, or how I was going to get away.
So I missed out a bit, and that was about you, while you were listening, you were building up what your defense would be or what your escape route would be, how you're going to get away, rather than really listening.
Yes. And in my family, nothing I said seemed to have any value. I don't know how many other children go through that, but I would suspect there are many.
So as a child in your family, you didn't have a sense that what you had to say would be respected, and you sense that that is the case probably with many, many children.
So I'm someone who holds peace as a very high ideal, and I think that having children experience really being heard would be a great benefit to the planet in terms of having a peaceful planet, and it's my time.
And you hold peace as being really important, and for young people, children, to be listened to really be listened to would go a long way on the planet.
Yes, thank you. I feel well heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Celine. So Ben, would you listen to me, please?
Listening.
Okay. Yeah, I had some thoughts earlier. I need to find them. Yeah, I think that as we were starting this round, I was thinking of that basically any group of people working together, any team needs to have a kind of culture to build this culture of empathy amongst themselves in order to work together, in order to collaborate, in order to work effectively, to be efficient.
So you're finding, remembering some thoughts, finding some thoughts, and one of them is around if people are working together in a team, then to be effective, to be efficient, there needs to be a common culture. Which on some level, I guess you're saying has to be a culture of empathy in some way.
Well, it seems like it has to be that people have to be able to listen to each other and hear.
So you're clarifying, I think what's essential is that people can listen to each other and can hear each other.
So it seems to be like a base point of working together, a base point of achieving anything. And my thought was, as Edwin was raising, like incongruous, so if you develop the skills, even with anybody in Congress, if just initially, if you develop those skills further with the Democrats, then maybe you can bring in, there'd be some chance of getting it going later with the Republicans, or the bringing them in together, because probably the skills aren't there amongst any of those politicians too well.
So I think you're saying, for there to be any kind of together, for there to be any kind of bringing in or any achievement together, there's, this is a kind of very basic kind of primal originary point, the empathy, a culture of empathy. For example, in the work that Edwin's doing with a Democratic congressman to develop skills, you're talking about skills.
So it's like whatever anybody's whatever work they're doing, in order to, unless they're being a one-man show, then there's a need to be able to hear other people working in order to benefit from the skills and people, and to be human with other people.
So you're saying we might work more effectively as individuals if we don't have empathy, and we could get more done on our own rather than developing empathy together? No,
I don't. I think that if you don't have empathy, that basically people are working on their own. And what we have all over the place in society is that people getting into positions of power and leadership and politics without having the capacity to hear and listen to others.
I was actually then distracted by my timer, which was going off. I think you were saying something about politics.
Did you want me to repeat it?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, that's yeah. Or you could continue the thought.
I think what I'm trying to move on to saying that people who get into positions of leadership or power or into politics quite often are people who don't have they have very little capacity around listening to other people, and so you end up with misuse or abuse of power.
So you're saying something like actually that whatever politics is, the process of it erodes empathy. People learn through politics not to listen to each other.
No, I didn't say that. No. I think that people in leadership who get into leadership or into power or as well into politics tend to be people who end up not listening to others.
So like it's the leaders. Actually, once you're in a position of leadership, you don't need to listen.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm kind of beginning to lose my thread, really, of what I was saying. So perhaps I'll just carry on. And go back to my point of cultivating a culture of people listening and being heard and being understood, and that is part of being human with each other, and that's what's needed before you can do other things.
On that note, should we my time has been off, so should we bring that arc to a close? Celine, the debriefing, wondering how that was for you, whether there were any insights for you, or
yes, the issue, I didn't know whether to intervene. I thought Anne was totally handling it, and I was tempted to jump in and say, well, no, that's not what Anne is saying, but I didn't, obviously, because I didn't do it. But that was kind of excruciating for me. And I did want to, participate in trying to get you to hear what she was saying.
That's tricky, isn't it? I mean, how do people handle that if somebody's really trying to reflect and just isn't reflecting? I mean, I guess, how do you intervene if there's sort of a good faith misunderstanding or
a well done challenge, Ben.
Yes, and in this case, I mean, I trusted Anne to be able to take care of herself, but that could be somebody who's, fragile or something. So yeah, I didn't know what to do. I decided it would work itself out, but I'm not sure. And then also I didn't intervene and say, well, the time is up, which I wanted to do. So those are a couple of reflections.
Maybe I'll add, it seemed, at that point, it seemed like Anne was getting frustrated. She was kind of losing a thread because she just couldn't seem to convey what, I'm curious how you were, Anne. You were kind of like seemed.
Yeah, to start, again, it was kind of confusing. It felt like I wasn't sure that Ben was challenging me. And I tried to, and then I wasn't quite sure where I was. I was a bit confused. I would actually have liked you to intervene, Celine.
Thank you.
Definitely.
And okay, so what would have been a way to do that? Would I ask Anne, do you mind or do I just speak directly to Ben and say, what I'm hearing Anne say is, because it seemed pretty simple, and I was impressed with how thick you were. So what is your recommendation? What would have been a good way to intervene?
I think that's a great question, and I think your solution, your proposed intervention, is a great intervention as well. I don't know, Anne and Edwin, what would you say?
Over to Edwin, I think.
Oh yeah, I would. Yeah, I was seeing Anne getting kind of frustrated, and I might have just said, well, let me just model the reflection and then give a clear reflection. And did you feel heard with that? And then see how it goes. Like, so Anne, I'm hearing you're saying this, and I would just say, oh, can I just kind of help with this, model a reflection, and then reflect and see if it kind of relieved her stress. She said, oh yeah, I feel heard. And then the other thing is to, if the person who's listening, I might have suggested, say it in really tiny bits. Can you just say it in just in a sentence and get a reflection? So I've had that with my mother, is like that. My mother cannot listen. And finally I just put it into 4 words. Can you just reflect these 4 words? And it was like a real success when she finally, after reflecting those 4 words, she actually did it after 4 or 5 times. So that was a really good challenge. Yeah, that would have been. I'm curious what Anne would have felt helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, I think my thought, Celine, would be that I had, well, I'll say first of all, a piece of like information of how that felt. I had like 2 or 3 goes with him to try to remedy it. And then it was like, I'm giving up here because it's not going to happen. So, and that does happen, I think. And you don't really want people to get to that point where they give up on the expectation of being heard.
Yes,
during the circle at some point anyway. And then another thing that I would do, that if I see something is not going too well, I'd gear myself up to be able to do some reflecting. So if I see a listener not really not doing very well with it, I'd be being prepared. So I'd be taking in what's being said so that I could do active reflecting. It could be, step into doing a little bit of that in order to help the situation. And I might do that I might scribble a note or 2 so that it would help me to pick it up so that I can step in and do it.
Thank you. That's good. That's great. Very helpful feedback, because I have experienced this sense of giving up. And then I felt a little hostile and I wanted to say, well, I haven't been heard, but I'm done now, something like that. So I appreciate what you said, and that a lot of me wanted to do that exactly. So thank you.
Yeah, there's a facilitator just to do the reflection and then ask the listener to reflect back. Can you reflect that back? So you get kind of like double, and then you're like keeping track of the listener to kind of check, kind of helping them to reflect back until they sort of get it, That's another.
Yeah. Oh, I like that too. Thank you.
And another thing that I do, if I feel like someone's not having a very good experience in the circling process, as a theme, when I get my turn to speak, I might pick up something of what, say, you'd been said and you hadn't been heard by your listener. I might pick that up and speak about it in my own way, which gives that person in the group, they know then that they've been heard, because I've chosen to use that and take it on within the circle. And it helps kind of, I don't know, it helps the circling, it helps the modeling it a little bit, in case that's useful to you.
Yeah.
So somebody dropped off another group, so I'm just going to leave the room for a minute just to see if they're coming back.
Right.
that I heard you, and then ask Ben to also reflect. Okay, yeah.
I'm just noticing we're sort of into our last 5 minutes of the breakout room, and then I guess we'll be back into the main room. So just thinking about bringing things to a close, really, and any kind of final learning points, any final comments, any thoughts, any unfinished moments. One thing that's on, sorry to interrupt you, Celine, one of the things that's on my mind actually is sort of seeing that from the other side. I was in an empathy circle here actually, where it was the listener gave up actually sort of after about 30 seconds or a minute. It was just sort of, I realized they weren't really in the place to listen or to reflect, just was really struggling with that. Just what did we do? I think just sort of skip the turn and then sort of switch to somebody else, so somebody else then became the listener. And he did that 2 or 3 times. So he was sort of participating simply, with his presence rather than any kind of reflection, which I think was okay. Sort of how, and yeah, isn't there a sense in which for this, is that sort of like an accessibility question? So sort of what if people who are really struggling to reflect, how do they participate in the empathy circle? Maybe through with their silence or simply with their speaking. Or
I had a challenge like that. It was at a rally, and it was with conservatives in Sacramento. Someone came in and they could just not get the reflection. Somehow they were so into their own interpretation of things. You could just feel this block, and they didn't even the concept of sort of reflecting what someone else said. It just seemed to not, yeah, it was like, and then there was someone who was conservative who'd been in the empathy circles, was there. And he said, just repeat back what he said. and it seemed to kind of get through it, but it was this other conservative who was just telling him to do that. Yeah, so
wait, so as a facilitator, would you step in and say, I'd like to reflect, do you mind if I reflect back what Ben said, or would that, is that something one can do?
You can do that, and then have the person also reflect it back after you've done it. So because you sort of modeled it. So yeah, this one was like a little bit different. It's like every context is a little different. It was a little, it took this other person who kind of spoke the same language as this other person to kind of say it in a simple terms.
Just repeat it. Yeah.
Just repeat it. It's like, and then once we had there was some not Proud Boy, they were Identity Europa group. So there's a group of 5 of them were in the circle, and they didn't want, and as we're talking about the Holocaust, and they did not want to reflect back what Dave, who's Jewish, was saying about the Holocaust. It's like if they reflected it back, they'd sort of be almost accepting this. They're kind of like anti-Holocaust deniers. And he did like 4 or 5 times. He just didn't want to say it because he didn't want it for him to say that, oh, my experience of the Holocaust was my family, half my family were killed and the other half was, I got to close the rooms, other half of the was spread around the world. So, and then again, one of the other people in his group said, just repeat back what you heard, and it kind of broke the ice. It's the second time it happened with conservatives. So. Yeah, but great, Ben. I thought it was great in terms of facilitation. It worked well. I thought you kind of handled everything.
Thanks, Edwin.
Well with the facilitation, and this was a bit challenging because we're missing 2 people. So,
right.
You kind of I thought it was handled really well.
Cheers.
Thank you.
I get into the topic so much I didn't want to disrupt it with challenges. It's a great topic, you know, this facilitation and mediation. So it got 3 seconds. See you on
See you back in the main room.
Yeah.
Hi. Okay.
Bill, did you lose someone from your group?
Yes, we did. Yes, Maritzell had to leave.
Oh, okay, she's not coming back. I tried to go into the main room to see if she came back. But...
Right. So are we all here then?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So welcome back. We now want to reflect on how the empathy circle practice fits in with the larger vision of creating a culture of empathy. We want to reiterate some of the core values for the culture of empathy, which are empathy, mutuality, openness, and care. And of course, you can have your own interpretations of those, what they mean to you. And so I'm going to give it over to Anne. If you're feeling, Anne, you feel okay? I know you haven't been feeling well.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay, I'll give it over to Anne to do the call on people.
Okay, so I'll call each person just to keep it speeded up. So Erin, would you be happy to start?
Absolutely. And I'm wondering, just if I understood correctly, that we're reflecting on this larger culture of empathy in our
Yeah, so I'll just clarify then. So how did you find that during your practice today you were embodying the culture of empathy and the values of empathy?
Yeah. Wow. Well, in our circle, we, of course, we had everyone chose a high level of challenge. And so that was a lot of learning opportunity. It just so happened that we really carried on a very deep conversation through all of those. And in that, I think it was reflecting a lot about what we were learning from our circling, and how we were going to be kind of enlightened outside of the circle by what we were learning about ourselves. And those type of things were a big reflection and like consistent with a culture of empathy, realizing, what we bring to our teaching and the level of vulnerability that we kind of model, or how we are present with people. I mean, so in so many ways, so I guess that's what it was. And I guess for me, just being able to have a challenge and stay present through that was in a group setting was great experience. So that's my piece.
Thank you. And I pass on to Dean. So Dean, how did you find you were embodying the values of a culture of empathy today?
Well, today I was blessed by having three lovely people in a circle with me. And even though I was being a disruptive element, the fluidity of the empathy flowed around me. And so this conversation carried on, which then modeled to me, the disruptive element, how you shouldn't actually just know that what you're doing is relevant to you. You should actually expose your vulnerability, because in exposing your vulnerability, you actually model to those who are not prepared to do so, that actually you can learn from that process of being vulnerable, and that actually modeling it from the empathic circle into the real world will actually help build that culture of empathy to others around, though, so that therefore we will all learn the skills of empathy rather than just actually doing it in the circle process.
Thank you, Dean. Rachel, are you all right to go now?
Yes, I am. Yeah, so was also in the same circle and joined by Sunita as well. And it was just beautiful. And I thank Dean so much for presenting some really great challenges and like artfully done. So really, really good. And I feel I think what was said and what I'm reflecting on is embodied like care. So in taking care of myself and naming my own emotions and taking just a minute to ground and just, yeah, self-care actually turned out to help others and take care of everyone else in the circle, which is really, really neat to receive that feedback. And I'm still sitting on that. I think that's pretty big. just how powerful like self-care is for the outer world, for the group, and yeah, just for everyone else around us. It's pretty big. And openness. So yeah, I had to be open and honest. And in doing so, as it was mentioned already, it modeled kind of and set the tone and, built the culture within our small group to be open right off the bat. So it was, yeah, we went deep and I felt, deeply empathized with, and yeah, I felt like it was just a real embodiment of the culture that we're trying to build. Beautiful.
Thank you, Rachel. And I'd like to pass on now to Graham.
Thank you, Anne. The last exercise we had, Sita was facilitating and Lou was, if you like, embellishing he was playing the listener, but embellishing. And I mentioned this in the group, I was the passive listener, and the facilitator helped this to connect with the speaker. And the point that I'm trying to get at is that when we all follow the very simple structure of the empathy circle that we have, and we actually do faithfully hear the other person, then everybody else in the group benefits. And it's almost like you have a thermometer going up and up as everybody is heard, so that temperature of the group will go up. And that was the kind of sensation that I got in that today's lesson.
Thank you, Graham. Bill, how about you?
Well, I want to express my appreciation for my great breakout room. They're very talented people. And when I look at the core values, I think openness and care. As a teacher, I wanted to, like Dean mentioned, your vulnerabilities and things, just make it what's happening, transparent. Just this is what's going on without a lot of, judgment around that. And then care is then the other part of that, once you open, is sort of like, well, how are people reacting to this? And are they getting? Are they getting something out of it? Do I feel it's beneficial? Do they feel it's valuable? Things like that. So those were the two things that came to me that I try to bring: openness and care. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Celine? Celine, you're muted at the moment.
Thank you. I learned a lot from our circle. I'm still digesting. And I think having these values is very helpful, because it's not, my personal choice that I'm trying to impose. It's part of the structure. And so I think that I will refer to them more openly, perhaps, in other circles, so that it's not just me making this decision. I am honoring the value of mutuality or of care or whatever in whatever I'm saying. So thank you. I'm glad to have these.
Thank you, Celine.
Learning.
Malin?
Yeah, I'm happy not to be first, reflecting right now, because it was, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Because it was intense, and I noticed how, so the word care, the value care, is something that I'm thinking about a lot right now, because for me, it's really helpful if I practice like self-care, because I was a bit stressed with Like the first time I had a challenge, I forgot about the time. Like I lose myself. And I think I do this a lot, not just on Tuesdays with you guys. So I learned a lot. And it was a good session. It was challenging. And I also noticed that I tend to step in too early. Like if it's like on the fence, if I can just wait a little bit longer and see what happens, like relax, then it's better. So I guess that's like connecting more with myself and my intuition, because I think as humans have that capacity. It's about confidence, I think, and experience, and trust. So it was a very valuable session today. Thanks.
Thank you, Malin. Ben, would you like to go next?
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, I think with this, it's a little bit different today, isn't it, with the challenge, which maybe for me disrupts the rhythm of the kind of empathy circle a little bit, but there's some playfulness in that, some kind of serious playfulness, and a real sense of, for me, solidarity, generosity, mutuality, and openness with the listening. I think whenever there's that listening there, for me, there's a sense of mutuality and openness. My own curiosity, I guess, about myself and about the people that we're listening to. We spoke a little bit about respect and fairness, and I think that's kind of encapsulated in the process as well. I think that has to sort of happen if the process is looked after. Yeah, lots of beauty and integrity. Yeah, wonderful, wonderful evening. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Ben. Sita?
Yeah, I really enjoyed our group and really appreciated the challenges that Lou offered, and I feel like I learned a lot, and enthusiastic to keep on learning, and I felt like openness and care were also themes for me. You know, sharing about my experience during the group, and self-care, as well as caring about how everybody else was doing. And I felt like we all were doing that. And I really appreciate having the specific values. They're really nice to be able to keep on going back to, and I feel like in deepening the practice. So thank you.
Thank you, Sita. Masha?
Yeah, so over the last, I think, 2-3 sessions that I've attended, I think in one way or the other, all of these 4 values were reflecting constantly at one point or the other. And today's was by far, I think, one of, again, a huge learning experience, and deeply grateful to each and everyone who were a part of my breakout group. But one thing that stood out for me today was care. For some reason, I felt very cared for. I mean, I think listening is something that people don't, these days you don't get to, experience a lot. Everyone's busy with their, mobile phones and whatnot, and everyone's always distracted. So over here, every time you have something to say, it's so nice, the feeling you get when people just reflect it back. And it makes me feel cared for, and that's a feeling I get every time I come to this group, possibly why I'm here this late. So deeply grateful, very, very grateful to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Vasha. Edwin?
Yeah, in our group, we had a couple of mediators. So we kind of got into talking about conflict mediation. And I mentioned how when I do mediation, I'll start by saying, my intention is to build a culture of empathy, to nurture it. And that means for each person to be heard and understood to their satisfaction. And I don't impose it that you all have to have these values. I just say, this is what I'm bringing here. And then we do an empathy circle. And I just kind of hold that and say it up front, because these values are sort of incorporated in the structure of the empathy circle. So they incorporate the empathic empathy and the listening, and they sort of nurture that just being heard. I was hearing from Rasha, you feel cared about, just that quality of being heard. You kind of just get a little bit of that oxytocin, feeling of warmth and care, and that kind of builds trust and openness, and that mutuality too. It's not just I'm doing all the listening, you know, we're all willing to listen to each other. So yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you, Edwin. Sunita?
Yeah, so for me, as mentioned by Erin, Rachel, and Dean, it was very rich, deeply insightful, quite intense too. And what stood out for me was being present to what was happening in me, and being present to understanding what is unfolding in the circle, and holding space, offering that kindness and compassion to whatever level is needed. So yeah, it was a very rich experience, and I'm very, very grateful. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sunita. Shima?
Well, as always, I had a great experience in my group, and what really stood out to me was the power of empathy. And Bill and Rasha told some really touching stories about the power of empathy in their real lives. For example, Rasha led a workshop in a village where she was teaching empathy to 6th graders, and there was this girl who had an alcoholic father who she hadn't spoken to for years. And Rasha taught her to stand in his shoes and empathize from his perspective. And from doing that, she was able to reconnect with her father and started talking to him. And Bill told a story about his a kindergartner who was having a tantrum that was actually disrupting the entire classroom. And just by having empathy with that kindergartner, Bill brought him a cup of water, and he just, after an hour of a tantrum, he just calmed down and came back to normal. So it was just reminded me about the power of empathy to really make a big impact in people's lives.
Thank you, Shima. Lou?
I'm so moved by hearing everyone's comments about what they've learned or how they were impacted by the practice today. And the 3 people who were in the group together with me, we had really rich practice and really rich reflection on the way people responded to situations. So it was, I think there was a lot of learning, and I think a lot of sharing. And I think in terms of how it related to the values of a culture of empathy, I think it becomes clear pretty quickly when someone actually is not empathizing, you know, that when they're doing something else, and how painful that is, you know, particularly when we're used to hearing each other in these circles. And when someone is doing something different, it becomes obvious pretty quickly. And it is very disconnecting. It's very painful. And that the things that the facilitator can do, like step in and do a reflection or name what's happening and invite someone into doing the process of the circle, that's actually showing care for the speaker. And it's showing care for others in the circle. Yeah. And yeah, so those are my reflections, and I think, yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you. I don't think I've missed anybody. Okay, so I'll go to, I think for me, that it's quite, in some ways it's quite astounding that whatever we work on together in our small groups or this bigger group, there's this strong sense of holding and collaboration and respect and various of these values that we are embodying, and it's just a pleasure to be around it. So thank you all. And now we've got a slot on our program for any final comments from trainers. So over
So I
to
have a comment I
any
want.
comments.
Yeah, I have a comment I want to make. One of the things that we did in our practice was, you know, I was playing someone that was very charged and very, you know, skeptical of the process, and what happens when someone is very charged and really disagreeing, you know, has some kind of big disagreement or some kind of problem, and that person is just reflected back. It's really powerful to see what happens when that's how someone is responded to, that they're responded to with empathy. I want to say that on the one hand. On the other hand, I want to say that as an empathy circle facilitator, if I'm in a circle and I see that there's a conflict between two people, and that those two people are trying to work out their conflict in this circle, and it's kind of taking over the circle, that's something that I would name and say, you know, the circle came together today. Everyone here didn't agree to come to solve your conflict. And so if it's getting too big for the circle, ask them to have that not be the work of the circle to resolve their conflict. So I just wanted to say that.
Any other comments from trainers, please?
Just to express my appreciation for everyone being here. You know, again, I contrast what I see, you know, going on in the world, and despite all of that and all the pessimism, for these 2 hours, we created a culture of empathy. And I think the importance of that cannot be understated, or overstated rather. Sorry, that's it.
Okay, well, I'll do the next piece here, which is our next session. So the training had been 4 sessions, and then we sort of added a 5th session. And when we set up this group, we only had, initially it was 4, and we've since added a 5th. So we didn't want to, you know, impose. So the 5th is optional. It's like next week. I hope everyone will come, because going forward, it is going to become part of the full training. It's going to be 5 sessions. And what's going to be is, it's a bit of we'll be doing an empathy circle, but it'll be evaluating and kind of your experience of the training and sort of a feedback, an evaluation of the training, and sort of next steps, like what do we do next steps? And we're also meeting, maybe we'll add a few other more informational pieces to it. That's still to be decided. So I hope everyone can make it. I'm just curious, who can make it next week?
What time is it, Bill?
It's the exact same time as we're doing now.
I think I have an appointment next week.
Okay, well then, so okay, great. Well, that's good to know. So that's we'll have a good turnout there. A reminder that we will be doing, there's a session survey, and I'll be sending that out again. It's always good if you can fill that out. We'll be doing new empathy buddies. I'll have new empathy buddies, and you know, again, try to hold an empathy circle with family and friends, or get a little experience with that during the week if you can. So I think that's it for me. Yeah, Lou.
I'd like to add that every other Friday, we hold an Empathy Circle Facilitators support group, and that is a place where you can continue your learning and growth, and you know, the kind of learning that we have dipped into in the last 2 classes, which is, you know, how to deal with difficult situations or certain kinds of things, challenges that come up as a facilitator. That Friday session is really because growing as a facilitator is something that is a lifelong process, actually. You know, noticing what goes on in you when certain situations happen, and what strategies you have for dealing with it, and then what practical, that's internally, and then externally, what practical things you actually do to deal with the situation. You know, that's a lifelong process of learning. And so we recognize that there's we want to provide an ongoing forum for that. And that's what that Friday session is. It's at 12:30 Pacific time. And we hold it every other week. So I wanted to make people aware of that and invite you to come to that.
And I put the link in, and the way that works is you get 15 minutes to, share an experience that you have, and then you can get feedback, and support from the other participants. So there's the link there.
And we can also role play it or work with it. However, there are lots of different ways to work with it.
Do you know offhand if this coming Friday is one of the Fridays?
It's not. We held it last Friday, so this Friday is not, but the following Friday would be.
Okay.
I was just going to bring up the feedback form to put it into the link too for. I can't seem to find it. Okay. One second. There we go. It's about to, so if you click on that right now, you can go right into filling that out. So Bill and Lou have something to report back on at the beginning of the next meeting. So just click on that, put your email in there.
We do value your feedback, both because we do read it and it does help us think about how to improve the training, and then it also makes us aware of the things that you are thinking about, and in terms of however we might adjust the content of the next session. So it is really valuable for you to do that.
It is, and if we don't get to it, then we have nothing to do, and then we go into interpretive dance, which is not pretty.
Okay, well, with that then, the twinkle fingers, and we'll see you if the trainers stay. We're going to do a bit of a debrief, and we'll hope to see you next week or the week after in the reunion. You'll have a really quick reunion, just in 2 weeks.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Take care.
Thanks so much,
Bye.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Have a good
Bye.
week.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.